Good evening. Good evening, everyone. I'm Erin Clancy. I am the Associate Vice President of Collections and Exhibits here at the National WWII Museum. And it's truly an honor to welcome you all here tonight for the opening of our latest special exhibit, On American Shores, the Aleutian Islands Campaign. Tonight, we are especially privileged to be joined by two veterans of the Aleutian Islands Campaign. Private First Class Jesse McGee, who served with Company A, 1st Battalion, 364th Infantry Regiment, that's a mouthful, of the U.S. Army, is here with us tonight. Jesse, if you could wave, please, that would be amazing. Thank you. Thank you. So, Jesse spent 18 months on the island of Adak, loading and unloading ships under some of the harshest conditions of the war. We also have Bosun's Mate 2nd Class Ira Milan. If you could please raise your hand, sir. Ira served as a Seabee with the 68th, 8th, and 5th Naval Construction Battalions, building critical infrastructure on Attu in the Aleutians, and later also served in Leyte in the Philippines. So please, again, if you wouldn't mind giving them one collective round of applause. Thank you. Thank you. It's an honor to have you both here. And we would also like to take a moment to honor any other World War II veterans, homefront workers, Holocaust survivors who might be in attendance here with us tonight or who are watching online. So if you are with us, please stand or wave so that we can express our gratitude. Oh, maybe online. Well, we are very grateful for your service. Thank you. It's a privilege for this museum to pay tribute to the service of World War II veterans and participants each and every day, but I would also like to recognize all veterans and active duty military personnel, military family members who are with us tonight. Your dedication to service continues the legacy of those who served before you. So please stand if you are a member of the U.S. military or a military family member so that we can applaud you as well. Roll number, yay. Thank you. So at the National World War II Museum, we are incredibly fortunate to have a dedicated community of supporters who bring our mission to life. And this evening, I am pleased to welcome members of our Patriot Circle and our charter members. So thank you so much for supporting everything that we do. Your generosity fuels our educational programs and exhibits. It ensures that stories like those of the people that we've just recognized are told for the generations now and for the future. So thank you, Patriot Circle members and charter members, for your support. So. Tonight, we officially open On American Shores, the Aleutian Islands Campaign, a powerful exhibition that brings to light a critical but often overshadowed chapter of World War II. The exhibit explores the Japanese invasion of the Aleutian Islands in Alaska, which was the only North American soil occupied during the war, and the brutal conditions faced by the U.S. forces as they fought to reclaim it are highlighted in the exhibition. Through the really vivid displays and the personal accounts, this exhibition delves into the hardships endured by soldiers, sailors, airmen, and also the unforgiving Arctic environment. It examines the profound impact of the war on the native civilian populations who were displaced and forever affected by the conflict. So by uncovering this lesser-known campaign, we gain a deeper understanding of the war's global reach and the sacrifices made in every corner of the fight. Tonight's opening is especially significant because it coincides with the 82nd anniversary of the Battle of the Komandorski Islands, a pivotal naval engagement here, let me get my notes here. It's a pivotal naval engagement that played a crucial role in preventing the Japanese reinforcements from reaching the Aleutians, which Ross is going to tell you a lot more about. The bravery of the sailors aboard vessels like the USS Salt Lake City, the USS Richmond, the USS Bailey turned the tide in this critical moment of the Pacific War. So this night is really a celebration of their service as well. So to offer an overview of the history and significance of this campaign, I am pleased to introduce the curator of the exhibition, Ross Patterson. So Ross is a curator here at the National WWII Museum. He joined us about a year and a half ago. He is originally from Virginia, and he holds a bachelor's degree in history and historic preservation from the University of Mary Washington, and a master's degree in history with a maritime certificate from Old Dominion University. Before joining the museum, Ross worked with several other military history institutions, and he has a deep research interest in both the Mediterranean theater and naval history. And I will just say anecdotally that we're very honored to have had Ross join our team. So please welcome Ross Patterson to the stage.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ross Patterson, and thank you to Aaron for the introduction. And this will be going through On American Shores as an intro to the exhibit and the importance of why this campaign should be remembered. And of course, since it is an often forgotten campaign, we have to know where the Aleutians are. So we will start with that. Oh, my little button is on. There we go. So a lot of the times when we tend to think of the war in the Pacific, we tend to think down, South Pacific, Central Pacific, pushing up through the Marianas and then going towards Okinawa and towards Japan proper. However, the easiest way to see where the Aleutians are is this map produced by the Army, which is referred to as Destination Tokyo. So this actually uses Tokyo as the center, and then the concentric rings you're seeing going out are 500-mile radius. And the islands that you start to see as you close in towards me are actually the Aleutian Islands up top next to Japan. So the Aleutian Islands are actually reaching out, dividing the Bering Sea from the Pacific Ocean from mainland Alaska over 1,000 miles towards the Japanese home islands. These islands were seen by the Japanese as being crucial to controlling trade and the supply lines of the Northern Pacific. And in the pre-war years, they were actually doing various incursions to examine the islands, try and actually determine whether or not they could get them. They viewed these as very crucial pieces of land and soil that they could take and actually hold to help their campaigns in the Pacific. A lot of the times nowadays when we tend to think of it, again, it's up near the Bering Sea, it's in the Arctic Circle, it's very remote, very isolated. You wouldn't tend to think of the Aleutians being a key factor, but as you see with Japan reaching up towards it, it was very close to the home islands and was seen as a vital piece of land that could actually cause a lot of damage to the Japanese if the Americans would actually lean in and exploit that closeness to the Japanese home islands. This area is very sparsely populated during the Second World War era. In the 1940s, for the time of the census, there was a little over 72,000 people living in all of Alaska as a whole, and a little over 1,000 people living on the 300 some odd islands stretching over 1,000 miles out into the Aleutian chain. So it's very sparsely populated with a minimal pre-war presence, but this is seen as vital to the Japanese for controlling this northern part of the Pacific and actually solidifying themselves as they advance across into the Pacific theater. Now, for a little bit more close-up on the campaign, you can see some of our key islands up there, Attu and Kiska. This campaign has long been requested via comment cards and suggestions at the museum as something that would be a good topic to cover. It is often forgotten. In fact, most of the scholarly research you will see on the Aleutians tends to use the word forgotten somewhere in the title or subtitle. It's on the National Park Service. You'll see the Forgotten Battle for Attu. Forgotten War tends to be the whole campaign. There's all sorts of variants of that. and for good reason. It doesn't tend to fit into most of the narratives of going your way from the South Pacific up, and it occurs at the same time, and even in some cases before a lot of those battles, and ranging all the way through. So this is offering a deep dive into these key points throughout the Aleutian campaign and actually past the campaign's official end date. Because while this campaign did start prior to Guadalcanal on the same date that the Japanese are attacking Midway, it actually continues on to the very end of the war. The very last naval salvo that's fired against Japan is fired from Aleutians-based ships. The Japanese are encountering American aircraft flying from the Aleutians all the way up to the end, and we are even flying aircraft from the Aleutians to see what the Soviets are doing when they actually invade Japanese territory. And all of that is tied to the Aleutians here on these islands. Now, officially, the campaign dates are going to range from June 3rd, 1942 to August 15th, 1943, which is going to be when you'd actually receive the campaign star for a lot of the main battles of the Japanese attack on Dutch Harbor, the first attack essentially against American soil by the Japanese, direct bombardment from carrier aircraft. Then you have the Battle of Komandorski Islands, which is the big event that is the anniversary today, occurring out in the Pacific and actually cutting off the Japanese from reinforcing the islands and being crucial to us actually getting back these key pieces of American soil. And also the Battle of Attu and Operation Cottage, taking back the two islands that you see up top, Attu and Kiska, respectively. However, as I said, this exhibit continues and covers the whole campaign, the entire forgotten section, including the air raids against the Kurils after, the naval operations that occurred, and even some of the deception operations playing on the fact that the Japanese had such an intense focus on the island's closeness to the Kuril Islands and what the Americans might be able to do to actually seize the land and seize the initiative and possibly attack the Japanese homeland. Now, one of the big points is, again, this is the only time that an enemy nation has seized and occupied American soil during World War II. It's a simultaneous attack planned for years as sort of a dream to take these islands, but as the Japanese declare war on the United States and make their war plans, they actually see this alongside Midway as part of a directive. So this is seen as a key part of the Midway attack, is to actually divert some of their carriers north and actually attack and seize these islands. During this initial engagement, when the land is being seized, this is the site where the Americans' main base at Dutch Harbor is bombed. 2 islands are seized, and an entire village of American citizens, of Aleut natives on Attu, are actually captured by the Japanese. This is effectively an American town. Everyone is an American citizen. Everyone's cards when they come back to the States at the end of the war is marked former prisoner of war, but this is the one time an American town on an American island is actually captured, and all the locals are later deported to Japan. So these people spend years interned in Hokkaido on the mainland, as no one really knows what happened to them for the rest of the war until the very end. And to just emphasize how important this campaign was at the time, there was a poll conducted in the U.S. in June of '42 that asked several key questions. One of the more prevalent ones to this is, do you know where Hawaii is? This is 6 months after Pearl Harbor. 21% of respondents could pinpoint Hawaii on the map. In the aftermath of the Midway battle and the Aleutians having 2 islands seized that were American territory, 71% of respondents could pinpoint the Aleutians at that time. Nowadays, I don't think 71% of respondents could probably pinpoint the Aleutians, but at least Alaska, we could pinpoint that. We actually had senators going out and visiting Alaska at this time just to further emphasize how important this campaign was perceived as it was getting underway, with Kentucky Senator Happy Chandler declaring that it was a direct threat to the lives of the American people and that the Japanese must be driven out whatever takes place. And he was further building on a quote that you will see in there from Billy Mitchell, actually, from years before the war, saying whoever controls Alaska essentially controls the world. It was seen as that important at the time to make sure these islands stayed American. And just to show you a little bit of the sites that people would see for the initial attack, this is, again, the first attack that you are going to see against American soil by the Japanese with Dutch Harbor here. In the main photograph, this is the the SS Northwestern, which was used as a power generation station, burning as part of the attack. And it's a 2-day attack on the islands. And then the large explosion is one of the many views from some of the marine positions. Actually, the Dutch harbor attack may have gone a lot worse. The Japanese, unlike at Pearl Harbor, they actually hit the fuel depot. So 750,000 gallons of fuel detonated, and while the radios couldn't get through the bad weather to alert other aircraft in the nearby area that there was an attack going on, the shock wave of 750,000 gallons of fuel exploding was enough to alert pilots miles away. So we actually had some air support on the second day. But the big stark image from Japanese propaganda films is the one at the top. Americans seeing Japanese troops with the rising sun flag on an American island, and in several of the films that they used for propaganda, actually capturing American servicemen on Kiska and interrogating them. So a lot of these images, they stuck with the American populace, and Attu, Kiska, Dutch Harbor, all of this was foremost in the minds early on in 42, and then continuing on into the islands were finally brought back into the U.S. in 43. And of course, one of the factors that is, again, often forgotten is the sheer amount of American civilians and citizens that are out here on these islands and the effect that a military campaign has on an American civilian population. A lot of the times when we think of the campaigns of the war, the home front is the home front. We don't have hostile forces pressing the attack, actually going in, seizing the land. And in the Aleutians, this happens. Americans are displaced. Americans have their villages attacked, machine gunned some of the buildings for the Japanese attacking Attu. American citizens are killed in these attacks, and Americans are displaced and evacuated by both allies and enemy forces. The islands are still seeing the effects on the civilian population of the Aleutian campaign. You have the Aleutian natives of Attu who are evacuated by the Japanese. They suffer casualties as they are interned in Hokkaido on the mainland of Japan. Tuberculosis is common. You end up with folks getting food poisoning from having to scavenge for food. Many of these folks do not survive the war. And when they come back, they are told, since the war has progressed and their island has been turned into a military base, they can no longer return home. And Attu has been abandoned from civilian population ever since. And at the same time, in order to advance up the island chain, America needs military bases on these islands, and there are civilian populations who may have their their villages turned into bases of operation for the Japanese, just like Attu. So the American military wants to ensure that no one is in these locations, that they can expand out military bases without the worry of civilian populations being caught in the crossfire. So 881 Aleut civilians are evacuated by the United States military to mainland Alaska. Villages are razed to the ground. Areas are abandoned. Some of the villagers, when they come back at the end of the war, they cannot return home either, just like with Attu. So there are several villages that are permanently considered lost as a result of the war that is still a scar on the landscape if you go and visit over 8 decades later, that this is still remains of the campaign that is often not considered. And then back to a more military side, with civilians out of the area, there is also the importance of the fact this campaign, it has a lot of the advancements that you are going to see for the Second World War. A lot of the things we associate with World War II, amphibious landings, close air support, kind of inter-service cooperation between the Army and Navy, a lot of these things are tested out in the Aleutians. It is very much a test bed as we advance into the Pacific. Some of the pictures here are highlights of material that you will see in the exhibit that highlights how this is an advancement forward in technology, an advancement forward in tactics, and how this campaign really helped the American military get on the advance foot as they push forward into the Aleutians. Of course, the large picture there you can see is an aircraft upside down. This is referred to as Koga Zero after the pilot, and the Aleutians was actually the first time that the Americans and the Allies got a hold of an intact Japanese Zero. most feared aircraft of the earlier war Pacific. And due to the attack on Dutch Harbor, a damaged Japanese plane attempted to do a landing, flipped, and was actually found largely intact by a naval aviation crew. And this was able to be brought back, restored, and give us the first real flying example that we could test tactics against for fighting in the Pacific. Additionally, one of the first sustained air campaigns of the war would be referred to as really the Kiska Blitz, after we discovered that the Japanese had taken some of these islands 1,000 miles out from our main bases. We began launching steady raids, sometimes individual aircraft, sometimes multiple, but constantly attempting to bombard the Japanese positions. And all these aerial attacks would then eventually evolve into the Kuro raids that are addressed in the exhibit, kind of keeping the pressure on the Japanese and constantly pushing forward with the first real land-based attacks against the Japanese home islands. So you'd see the building of bases closer actually advancing to a nearby island and doing proto-island hopping like you'd see later in the Pacific, avoid key Japanese bases or avoid islands that aren't necessarily strategically important compared to others, and jumping to the most relevant one, in this case, getting almost as close as possible to the Japanese bases to create airfields, provide air cover, and hop forward, and then emergency landing spots as well, which we'd see a lot further on in the Pacific. And carrier-based air support is also going to be first tested out here. The picture up top is a Jeep carrier, or a little escort carrier, called the USS Nassau that made its way up into the Bering Sea. And when you go through the exhibit, you will be able to see a video where there's an interview with one of the pilots on that carrier, and he explains just why it's a terrible idea to go in the Bering Sea with a little Jeep carrier, because there are extremely bad waves, and he refers to it, his name is Alfred Tadeo, as almost a tragedy anytime anyone took off. It was extremely dangerous, but they were able to get in close and actually provide close air support for the first time, proving that carrier-based forces could actually get close-range fighter aircraft in to targets and actually support ground forces as they push forward. This is also a key point for Marine aviation. The first deployment of Marines in a combat scenario as aviation pilots was aboard the Nassau as well. They were the reconnaissance pilots for the flights. And there's another Navy topic, again, Navy background with my certificate there. Nowadays, we see a lot of things about naval underwater demolition teams. We have them in our main exhibit for Road to Tokyo. The first deployment of Navy combat demolition units was to Kiska. They arrived slightly behind the main advance, but the combat team there was actually crucial in disarming a lot of the explosives and getting intact examples of Japanese mines and other explosive devices that were scattered around the island as part of the big intelligence windfall that helped us understand Japanese equipment and be able to counter it better. And of course, one of the large things to emphasize is the cost of the Aleutian campaign. This is an extremely bloody action for the fighting, especially on Attu. You are fighting both against the Japanese and the weather. The Aleutians are known for their terrible environmental conditions in terms of fighting weather. In the summer, 50 degrees is a good warm day, and it only goes colder from there. The environment has something that's referred to as a willowaw, which is the ability for the wind to just run down these volcanic islands and form into gale force and hurricane force winds at any given time. Freezing cold up in the northern sections of the mountains can actually let you carve trenches in the ice. So you have a lot of casualties that are going to occur with the ice and with the cold and with the weather, and then with the Japanese on top of that. The battle to retake Attu is the second costliest in the Pacific as far as combat ratio. For every 100 Japanese defenders, 71 Americans are going to be killed, wounded, or incapacitated. And that is only surpassed by Iwo Jima in terms of the number of Americans killed and wounded to take an island. The Japanese garrison also is going to fight to the last man. A lot of the banzai charges we associate with movie depictions of Japan, and then key events in Japan, Alligator Creek in Guadalcanal, for example, the fighting on Okinawa. There was a banzai charge that occurred on American soil. The Japanese garrison decided that they were going to fight as what was referred to as shattered jewels. They would fight to the last man in a battle where there was no hope of rescue, and they were going to fight for the Battle of Annihilation. So of 2,531 members of that garrison, only 27 are going to survive the war. This is a very brutal and bloody fight, and it is a high cost in American lives, with 549 killed in action on Attu, thousands injured and wounded and affected by the cold. Kiska is going to see hundreds more. And there is even a Medal of Honor that is won posthumously in the fighting. The gentleman who is on the screen here is Joseph Joe Pantaleon Martinez. He is the one Medal of Honor recipient for the Aleutian campaign, and actually is the first Hispanic American to win the Medal of Honor during World War II. He is the first Colorado native to win the Medal of Honor during World War II, and he is awarded it posthumously for leading what is effectively a one-man charge through multiple layers of these ice trenches going up the hill, and is described by reporters as essentially falling with his rifle in his shoulder, too hot to fire. So his account is in the exhibit on a panel dedicated to him and his Medal of Honor that he receives. Additionally, the cost is covered a lot in our oral histories that are worked into our videos. So when you watch videos on Attu and Kiska, you will hear from several of the accounts from our oral history department. Some of them are from engineer Joseph Sasser, who was involved in the Japanese banzai charge I mentioned. He was actually part of the engineer section near the hill where the Japanese were attempting to seize the main gun positions on Engineer Hill. The Navy pilot I mentioned, Tadeo, talks about his casualties. His unit loses over 25% of his squadron to Japanese anti-aircraft fire and weather conditions fighting up in the Aleutians. And in addition, we have accounts from Andrew Petrus, who is an infantryman that encountered boats going down when they attempted to land ashore, and what it was like to actually come under fire, having to walk out on the snow and have Japanese fire come down from out of the fog and start striking around you. And he describes vividly the sound of the machine gun rounds hitting around him as he advanced forward. And Stanley Wolchek, I believe I pronounced his last name right, I'm sorry if I did not, he provided an account as well, talking of the cost of an American soldier he came across badly wounded on Attu and how that affected him. So all this further emphasizes the sheer human cost that we had, both civilian, as I mentioned earlier on, and then of the soldiers who are actually fighting on these islands to retake the lost pieces of America. And as I mentioned, the fighting did not end with the campaigns ending, so we do continue to cover past this, the fact that this fighting is going to involve all service branches and continue to the very end of the war. You have Marine units involved early on in the combat, and then helping secure Alaska proper throughout the war. The Army is going to establish countless bases going out along the 300 islands of the Aleutian chain, reaching out that 1,000 miles closer to Japan. The Navy is going to establish many bases, move PT boats, move heavy cruisers, move light cruisers, and you can see camouflage them amongst the islands and lead constant raids against the Japanese home islands. And the Army Air Force is going to also lead constant air attacks, often isolated aircraft operating in twos, fours, small groups unescorted for 1,400 round trip mileage flights out to Japan and back. And the Coast Guard, of course, helping ensure that everyone who goes down is able to be saved and maintain the local travel ways for the Aleutian populations that are still present and protect the shipping, as the Merchant Marine are constantly being brought up to help resupply these various bases. So these islands do not just stop to be a theater just because the campaign ends in 1943. It is a constant stream of soldiers that are up there, and they do play a key role in helping divert Japanese attention and convince them with deceptions of Operation Wedlock is one of the large ones to help keep the focus on the Aleutians and help divert more and more Japanese troops to manning the home islands for the fear that the Aleutians will once again be the springboard the Japanese think as Americans can advance forward into the home territories. Now for today itself, as Aaron mentioned, this is the 82nd anniversary of the Battle of Komandorski Islands. This is a strategically important battle and one of the three main engagements of the campaign for the Aleutians, and is the last daylight surface action in history. Now what that means, to be a little bit more specific, is there are no planes and there are no submarines that are playing any role. This is all surface ships on the water, and they are firing with their main guns at each other for over 4 hours. So it is a long, protracted, running gun battle that if you went back to the age of sail, it would be considered a daylight surface action for Trafalgar, and this would be the last of those daylight surface actions. After this, there are aircraft involved, there are submarines, the actions may be at night, but this is the last main surface action that you're going to see in history. This is a pitched battle that occurs between a task force of American servicemen who did not expect to encounter as strong a Japanese force as they do. The admiral in charge, Admiral Sock McMorris, is outgunned, outnumbered, and decides to essentially turn and engage a superior Japanese force before he is forced to pull and actually head towards Japan, firing with largely the rear guns of his ships. And over the course of those 4 hours, the Americans fire almost 3,500 shells, a little over 3,400 rounds, and actually run out of ammunition in several of the main ships. And you'll see that in a video within the exhibit that we'll show shortly, talking about that. And the Japanese expend similar numbers. During the engagement, there are 7 Americans who are killed in fighting, 2 aboard the heavy cruiser Salt Lake City, and 5 aboard the destroyer USS Bailey. The USS Bailey is the lead destroyer to launch a torpedo attack against the Japanese. The Salt Lake City, which is the main picture in the back, as you can see the smoke running out her funnels, was actually hit and her engine room flooded. So she, the main main warship for the Americans, was brought dead in the water. And the Commodore of the destroyer fleet ordered the destroyers to make a torpedo attack against the superior Japanese force. And the Bailey was the one in the lead, and the Bailey was actually the one to get her torpedoes off. But in the process, she was struck by 2 8-inch rounds, which took out a damage control party. And the head of that damage control party was a gentleman named Leroy Ellis Whitehead, who was raised in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and was the highest ranking officer aboard the Bailey killed in that action. He was actually buried at Adak in the aftermath of the fighting, and was later reinterred up in Baton Rouge. So not only is this the 82nd anniversary of the battle, this is the 82nd anniversary of his passing as well. Now, this action with the cruisers essentially leading the Japanese on a fight did actually cause the Japanese to turn back at the very end. We'll see that in a video production shortly, but this was key to actually cutting off the Japanese. McMorris made a strategic choice to engage the enemy and actually fight them until he ran out of ammunition, and in doing so, he convinced the Japanese that surface reinforcement of the Aleutian Islands was no longer feasible. From this point on, essentially, they would try and rely on submarines, which would not work well. And his action and the actions of the crews of these ships and the sacrifices of the 7 men who were lost kind of helped secure the final bulwark to let us actually go back and fight on the islands and retake the lost pieces of American soil. So what we will see next is the video that is on display in the gallery, which actually has accounts from 3 members of ship crews that were involved at the Battle of Komandorski Islands. There's a gentleman named McCorson, who was a 20-millimeter gunner aboard USS Salt Lake City. Another gentleman who is the ammunition handler for one of the stern guns of the Salt Lake City as well. And then finally, a gentleman who is the gunnery officer for the USS Bailey. He was on the same ship as Whitehead. So when you see his name is Hogshead, and when he talks about seeing men killed and men he knew well, he is referring to Ensign Whitehead from Louisiana and several other members of the damage control party. So.
And we headed up to Dutch Harbor in the Aleutians, patrolling up there. That's when we got in that big battle. Komandorski's.
Guided by intelligence intercepts, American forces under Rear Admiral Charles Sauk McMorris were ordered to the waters south of the Komandorski Islands to halt a Japanese relief convoy bound for the Aleutians.
We had left Dutch Harbor in company with the Salt Lake City, which is a heavy cruiser, the Richmond, which is a light cruiser, and 3 other destroyers. And on the morning of March 26, 1943, one of the ships saw some masts on the horizon.
They thought there were supply ships going to Attu and Kiska.
But it wasn't but a few minutes after that that we saw other ships, which turned out to be an extensive Japanese force.
We had about twice that many ships, heavy cruiser and light cruiser and destroyers.
Rather than facing a lightly escorted convoy, McMorris instead found his targets guarded by 4 cruisers and 4 destroyers under the command of Japanese Vice Admiral Boshiro Hosogaya.
The next thing I knew, we were in battle. It wasn't just a routine sunrise, general quarters. It was the real thing. My battle station was down in the aft magazine handling room.
And I was on a number 19 20-millimeter gun just forward of the 20-millimeter ready room. And I figured we're on the ship, the skipper knows what he's doing, and I'll stay with him.
Deciding to engage the enemy without waiting for possible air support, McMorris ordered his cruisers to open fire. Identifying the larger Salt Lake City as the most pressing threat, Japanese gunners returned fire and gave chase in a running engagement.
But we wondered what's happening up there. They were bringing shells from the forward turret down to the aft turret. They couldn't fire the forward one, but they could. We were going out. We'd set them on fire, and then they'd hit us and hit 8 times, I think.
Over the course of 4 hours, the Japanese slowly gained on McMorris's ships, even closing within range of the American destroyers. Then, with her magazines nearly depleted, the Salt Lake City was hit astern. Water flooded into her engine room, and the heavy cruiser drifted to a halt.
The skipper of the Salt Lake City hoisted a signal which said, "My speed 0."
We were dead in the water, and the USS Bailey made a smoke screen around us while we got up steam again.
She had the big guns for us, and without her, we would have been taken out, I'm sure. The situation looked pretty hopeless, and the Commodore of the destroyer screen ordered 3 of us to make a daylight torpedo attack. And all of a sudden, there was a huge explosion close aboard. And about that time, we lost power. It's a pretty terrible feeling to know and realize that you're in a watertight compartment and it's dark and the water's coming in. We did a little praying, I want to tell you. To our great relief, the battle basically ended right then.
Miraculously, Hosogaya misinterpreted some of the final volleys fired at his ships as bombs from American aircraft. Turning away from the American torpedo attack launched by the destroyers, he left the field moments away from victory. Instead of sinking beneath the waves, McMorris and his sailors found themselves in control of the seas.
When we got through that battle, we had 2 bags of powder left.
I remember coming up on deck and seeing men who I had known well, who had been killed, and the loss of the forward fire room and the forward engine room had been, they were totally flooded to the waterline. Any other small compartment flooded would have probably sunk us for sure.
When I got back to my quarters, my mattress was missing. All I had was a blanket that I had down in the handling room. I think they used my mattress to plug a hole.
We didn't know how long it was going to be before the Japs turned around and realized they'd made a mistake by not pressing the attack. because had they done so, that's almost a certainty that they would have obliterated all of us.
In the end, the Americans lost 7 sailors and 20 were wounded, and Japanese forces suffered 14 killed and 26 wounded. The Salt Lake City would need extensive repairs alongside 2 of her escorting destroyers, but the men had succeeded beyond what the Navy could have hoped for. With the seas now secured, the stage was finally set to take back the lost islands of the Aleutians.
All right. And of course, there are 2 other videos, as I mentioned, of our media pieces, which will cover the Battle of Attu and the Battle of Kiska, our Operation Cottage to retake Kiska, which will be covered again in the exhibit. But today, being the Battle of Komandorski's anniversary, I wanted all of us to share in the video for this big opening. I also wanted to acknowledge thanks to our different departments that have helped with this exhibit, collections, of course, education, exhibit design and construction. You'll see up as you go to the 2nd floor, there's a very large map that was Corey Doran from Exhibits and Collection, so congratulations to her on how great the maps turned out. Also our oral history section with all the oral histories that were involved with the construction of the linear media pieces. The media center, so Amy is in charge of the videos that we did, so thank you to Amy for the videos you are going to see in the exhibit. And the JCI, the Jenny Craig Institute, for helping work with the construction of text and making sure we're all set to go. So thank you all for your attendance, and if you have any questions, just let me know.
Thank you so much, Ross, for sharing your insights with us tonight as we celebrate the debut of On American Shores, the Aleutian Islands campaign. If you have any questions, please ask Ross. He'll be at the front of the stage. I know you must have a million, but yeah, he'll be here for as long as you want, right? Yeah, okay, great. So, and if you have not already visited the exhibition, I really encourage you to go to the Brown Foundation Special Exhibit Gallery on the 2nd floor of the Louisiana Memorial Pavilion and see this remarkable and important special exhibition. And if you're joining us online, I hope that you will visit us before the exhibition closes on January 11 of 2026. So thank you so much again for coming and helping us launch this special exhibit, and enjoy. Take care. Thanks.